This is Psycho Flower Girl. We saw her back in version 1.4 and she's a very interesting character who clearly has all of her mental faculties in order. Now let me introduce you to even more Psycho Flower Girl. I think I'm starting to understand why it's called Havoc. Seems like everyone from that element is crazy. Yes, that includes Dungeon. Anyways, version 2.5 is taking a visit back to the Havoc element as if we didn't have a bunch of them already, and finally pulling the trigger on Chekhov's gun with the first 5-star of the update. Phrolova, she appeared back at the start of the game in cahoots with Scar, and since then people were thirsting for her to get added to the game. She's always kept a low profile, occasionally being seen throughout Wuwa casually stalking Rover, so getting the chance to finally play her is of course a welcome surprise. Such build-up though obviously leads to heightened expectations on how well she'll perform, considering a lot of people have had their eyes on her since day one. For today we're going to be discussing Phrolova's gameplay and moveset to analyze her rotations and playstyle, giving my thoughts on her expected performance in the metagame as well as a primer on how to build her, what teammates work best with her, and whether or not she's a character worth your time. The Havoc element got a significant amount of attention throughout late version 1, early version 2, releasing Camellya, Rocha, and Cantarella in quick succession of each other. Coupling that with Havoc Rover and Dungeon still performing decently today, Havoc as a whole is in not too bad of a spot right now, maybe not the best, but certainly far from the worst. That being said though, we have yet to finalize a 3-person squad for Havoc involving the new units like Rocha and Cantarella. As you're aware, Wuwa's current direction with its characters is to put birds of a feather in the same party, that being Mono Glacial, Mono Spectro, Mono Fusion, Mono Arrow. Havoc also has the Mono team if we're splitting hairs, so you can go Camellya, Rocha, and Cantarella, but there really isn't a through line connecting the units together for the most part. That's where Phrolova comes in. As a brief overview of what she's meant to do, basically Phrolova's a tandem attacker. A good portion of her DPS can be inflicted while off-field in a similar fashion to the follow-up attack Lupa does whenever one of her party members activates their liberation. Only instead of being an extra property like it is on Lupa, it's Phrolova's entire win condition. We'll start with her Forte circuit. As is standard by this point, Phrolova has 2 resource bars, Volatile Notes and Aftersound. Like with all resources, you accumulate them by going about the rest of her kit. For Volatile Notes however, there are 3 different ones you can get: Strings, Winds, and Cadenza. To acquire a String Note, you either have to use a Basic Attack 3 or Reincarnate Basic Attack, more about that later. To acquire a Wind Note, you need to use a skill or a Reincarnate skill. To acquire a Cadenza Note, you need to use an Echo skill or an Intro skill. The point of Volatile Notes is to set up her liberation, which I'll get into in just a moment. Aftersound's a bit different though, because the main way you accumulate stacks on it, outside of her inherent skill and sequences, is while she's not on field, giving you an indication of how she's meant to be played. Anytime she uses her empowered Hecate attacks, she acquires a stack of Aftersound, up to 24. From this, we already have an idea of her playstyle. You stack a Volatile Notes on her while she's active, then switch off field to stack up Aftersound. To figure out how to do that effectively, we'll discuss her skill next. Phrolova's skill is a simple one: damage nearby enemies. Afterwards, she enters a Reincarnate state, augmenting her next basic attack or skill cast, which is what I meant by Reincarnate basic attack and skill. They're essentially just stronger attacks, with the basic attack in particular stagnating opponents. You can only choose one or the other per instance of Reincarnate, so it comes down to whether you want a Volatile String Note or a Volatile Wind Note. Once you acquire 6 Volatile Notes, your heavy attack becomes Scarlet Coda, a stronger attack that stagnates and pulls nearby enemies towards you, giving Phrolova some grouping capability. This attack also grows in power for every stack of Aftersound you have, and is considered skill damage, not heavy attack damage. Further, it's also considered an Echo skill. After casting Scarlet Coda, Phrolova then gains access to her liberation, which can be done every 25 seconds, effectively serving as its cooldown. Phrolova is the first character in Wuwa to not have an energy cost on her ultimate. Rather, she has no energy whatsoever. The only way to gain access to her liberation is by using Scarlet Coda. When activated, she gains a long-lasting buff that has her float in the air and summon the Hecate boss to fight in her stead. I suppose you can sort of call this a transformation. In any case, first and foremost, while in this state, you get an extreme attack buff. At the time of writing this, you're looking at plus 120% attack. Granted, I'm going by numbers on testing, so the official numbers might change, but that might be the single biggest steroid we've seen on the character yet. Next, Phrolova will activate the Volatile Notes in order of acquisition every 4 seconds, consuming all 6 of them throughout the process and changing Hecate's attacks. There are 2 different modes of Hecate depending on whether you're on-field or off-field. If on-field, you can basic attack, dodge, jump, and whatnot on Hecate like it's a character. After using 2 basic attacks with Hecate, the next one will be empowered. Based on which note you're on, whether Strings, Winds, or Cadenza, Hecate will get a different empowered attack. All 3 of them are considered an Echo skill damage though. String has no extra effect, Wind pulls enemies in, and Cadenza also pulls enemies in while stagnating them. If you're trying to min-max, you'll obviously want to get as many cadenza notes, seeing as they offer stagnation and grouping capability, which can be helpful in certain fights. But if your only concern is damage, it doesn't really matter what notes you have, as they all do roughly the same amount of damage. When off-field though, Hecate will autonomously basic attack on its own, and whenever your other two party members use echo skills, Hecate will deal an empowered attack, allowing you to potentially front-load multiple empowered attacks one after another in quick succession if you have someone who can cast echo skills very often. If it wasn't apparent, they want you to pair Phrolova with Camellya, as the latter's entire kit contains a bunch of echo skill casts. That should give you a good idea of how Phrolova likes to play. She builds up her Forte using her basic attack skill, echo skill and intro, then when she gets 6, you can pop her ultimate and then decide if you want to fight on-field or off-field. If you have teammates who can spam echo skills, then you'll want to switch to them so that Hecate can spam empowered attacks one after another quickly. If you don't, you're probably better off keeping Hecate and by extension Phrolova on-field. Let's cover the rest of her kit before moving on to her rotation. Inherent skill 1 makes it so anytime you cast an echo skill on her, she gets 30% damage reduction and interruption resistance. Never a bad thing to be tankier. Inherent skill 2 though brings her 10 stacks of aftersound immediately upon entering combat, and for every stack, she gets bonus crit damage. To repeat, the numbers are subject to change, but it's 2.5% per stack, so at 24 stacks, you're looking at an extra 60% crit damage. In addition though, if you get more aftersound stacks, while they don't register beyond 24 for the purposes of Scarlet Coda, she will instead get 1% bonus crit damage up to 100% for a possible total of 160. Considering aftersound is always in effect, so long as you stay in combat, Phrolova turns into a beast in long drawn out fights. No doubt helpful in whimpering in some floors of TOA where you're gonna be fighting for a while. As for her intro skill, Phrolova has 2 of them, but they're more or less the same thing. A blast of Havoc damage that can lead into basic attack 3 right away. But when you intro in after Phrolova's ultimate wears off, it's an even stronger attack. And of course, lest we forget, intro skilling in gives her a volatile cadenza note. For her outro skill, it's a classic elemental and combat type damage boost, Havoc and heavy attack in this case. Also, if you swap out after using her ultimate, Hecate will immediately use an empowered attack for some extra DPS. Overall, it's a unique way of approaching combat. Next to Chakona, Phrolova is one of the first units who can essentially fight autonomously off-field in a meaningful way. Prior, we only had units like Yinlin, Mortefi, Cantarella, and Jojo who could dish out coordinated attacks, but Phrolova is an independent attacker the same way Chakona remains present on-field even after switching out. Now, seeing as you have to fill up her Forte gauge in order to even gain access to her ultimate, here's a good way to go about it. Intro skill in, then basic attack 3, giving you a cadenza and strings note. Basic attack 3 will send you into reincarnate, so follow up with a skill for her winds note, then resonance skill, and reincarnate skill again for 2 more wind notes. Finally, use your echo active to get another cadenza note, bringing your total to 2 cadenza, 1 strings, and 3 wind. Now you can heavy attack to activate Scarlet Coda, which will then prime your liberation. After using Liberation, if you have someone who can echo skill as well, such as Cantarella, then you'll want to do 2 on-field empowered attacks before outro skilling, which will do 2 more empowered attacks, and then Phrolova and Hecate will do some more depending on how many echo skills you can use. If you don't have another echo skill user though, then just stay on Phrolova and basic attack throughout the duration to get as many empowered Hecate attacks as you can. I think it's pretty straightforward. Get 6 notes, use heavy attack, then liberation, then swap out, or stay in depending on who you have. Ideally, Phrolova's at her best when swapping out, because while she's doing her thing, you can focus on your active character to have 2 units attacking at the same time in essence, though it is nice that she's able to still function without a hyper-specific unit. Anyways, that brings us to the next part of the video. How strong is she? Even before taking a look at calculations, I feel the need to emphasize just how significant Phrolova's playstyle is. Like I said, she's the first true off-field attacker in the game. Chakona is present off-field and she can do some pretty solid damage, but she's a support first and attacker second. Phrolova is an attacker first, an attacker who opens up the opportunity for you to play another attacker. Prevailing Wisdom was unsure how strong Cantarella was given she was a healer sub DPS but wanted to be on field for a decent amount of time. Phrolova is a perfect complement to Cantarella and vice versa. More than just enabling a new playstyle, having a persisting off-field attacker gives you a ton of options. For instance, in Wuthering Waves, you now have someone who can group enemies together, and being off-field means you can utilize that time efficiently by having 2 characters active at the same time putting in work. It's really that double teaming that brings a ton of value to Phrolova. From a conceptual standpoint, Phrolova's got a ton of situational versatility in that she can add to an already stacked Wuthering Waves team while at the same time adding consistent DPS for single targets in the sense that you can go to town on bosses or Cantarella while Phrolova's pounding away at them too. That being said, the stipulation's of course the type of team you'll be expected to build, but at this point I don't think anyone's surprised to hear that. Let's briefly go through sequences before getting onto teammates and builds. S1 adds more power to both the reincarnate basic attack and skill, which is a key part of her rotation. Secondly, she passively gains up to 2 volatile cadenza nodes while out of combat, accelerating her setup time and grouping capability. It's a great quality of life sequence to have for DPS and rotation fluidity. S2 busts the multiplier of her Scarlet Coda attack by a flat amount plus more for each aftersound stack, and casting it will grant you 14 additional aftersound, which when combined with their inherent skill 1 giving you 10 already, brings you to a full 24 without having to do anything extra. As a reminder, stacks of aftersound beyond 24 will net you bonus crit damage, another great quality of life sequence with a bit of extra damage. S3 amplifies echo skill damage and makes all volatile notes become cadenza notes upon casting Scarlet Coda. As well, targets hit by a Hecate cadenza attack will have their attack reduced by 20% for 15 seconds. Turning all volatile nodes to cadenza adds more grouping capability to Phrolova, and I guess the attack debuff is nice, though I can't really imagine a scenario where you need to lower enemy attack outside of maybe tanking endgame holograms. S4 is a nifty party-wide buff, bonus attribute damage to the entire team for 30 seconds when casting an echo skill, which effectively will always be active in light of all her major attacks being echo skill damage. S5 has a creative field when using your ultimate for 4 seconds that stagnates all enemies nearby, and you also get 30% more damage reduction in her ultimate state. It's a good utility sequence, but it doesn't improve your damage, although if you're getting S5 you're probably going all the way anyway. Phrolova's final sequence powers up Hecate's enhanced attacks, and you can also get an extra attack with Hecate after using a reincarnate attack or skill, which also grants more aftersound stacks to work towards that crit damage buff. Finally, Phrolova gains either 60% bonus Havoc damage or deals 40% more damage overall based on if she's on-field or off-field respectively. S6 has a ton of DPS backed into it. If you're planning on spending extra money on Phrolova, I would say S2 is a good spot to aim for. The remaining sequences are all nice, but if you're looking at later sequences, you probably have money to burn anyway. Let's talk about teams now. If it wasn't apparent, Cantarella is her best partner, full stop, reminiscent of Zani Vibi and Cardathea Chicona. That's not to say Phrolova's unplayable without Cantarella, but playing them alongside each other is where things really get good. Her best team will consist of herself, Cantarella, and Rocha. You can go from Phrolova to Rocha, then Rocha to Cantarella, and Cantarella will essentially be the real main DPS of the team while Phrolova's just chilling in the background. Rocha's ultimate attack buff can be tapped into from both units simultaneously. You could also do Phrolova, Shorekeeper, and Cantarella as well, but I'm fairly certain Rocha offers more for the team. Still though, not a bad option. Theoretically, you can flex anything into your third-party slot since you don't need sustain thanks to Cantarella's healing. Danchin, Sanhua, Zhe, or anyone who can add some extra DPS to the team through busts or on-field attacks. Mono Havoc is ultimately highly recommended, but fortunately there is some legroom in case you have to put something else in there. Now for her weapon options. Personal weapons of course the best on her. It's the first rectifier to exceed 500 base attack and also comes with a juicy crit rate boost. You get tons of DPS stats when casting echo skills like Ignore Defense, echo skill damage amplification, and regular skill damage. By the way, if you pulled for Cantarella but not her signature, you can also make use of Phrolova's signature to an extent. Also, being in the rectifier category, you get plenty of options to choose from. As if String Master wasn't already the best weapon in the game, it's gotten even better. Phrolova very much enjoys the crit rate, and though she doesn't have an easy way to apply skill damage off-field, she can deal skill damage a ton while on-field, and she can benefit from the 12% attack you get by being off-field, making it a fantastic alternative if you don't have the funds to get her signature. The best 4-star rectifier is probably Augment, I would say. It's a solid option for general DPS. Lastly, let's talk echo sets. Alongside Phrolova in version 2.5 came the new Dream of the Lost echo set, which couldn't be more obviously intended for her. The interesting thing is, there's only a 3-piece set effect on this one, meaning you could do 3-piece, 2-piece. I would recommend doing Dream of the Lost and one of the other 2 Havoc sets. Phrolova already gets a metric ton of attack in her base kit, so Havoc damage is top priority. For main echo, you should go for Nightmare Hecate, bonus Havoc and echo skill damage, perfect on her. For main stats, go for crit on 4 cost, Havoc damage on 3 cost, and attack on 1 cost. Considering Phrolova doesn't build energy whatsoever, that streamlines your echo farming experience on her very nicely, as the only substats you need to aim for are crit, attack, and skill damage. Really it's just crit rate and crit damage that you need. She already has so much % attack you don't have to sweat too much over getting more on her echoes. That about does it for Phrolova, a very interesting playstyle but one that's effective. Definitely someone you should go after if you have the right party members to make the most out of her. But I'm certain most people will pull for her because they've been fiending for her to come out for over a year now. Let me know if you guys have any questions about Phrolova in the comments down below, as well as if you plan to pull for her or not. As always, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @ForestFam, join my Discord server, and check out my other character review videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.